FM26 is here, but data export isn't. Now I could sit around and moan endlessly, but that's not how I do things here. Let's focus on solutions. So today we're going to start simple with a basic attribute export. We will then use that to create a tool to allow us to analyze our player's ability. Then we'll expand to look at larger datasets and how we can create our own custom metrics. Before we can export, we need a purpose. We need to know what we're trying to do before we can identify what information we need. I've started a save here where I've taken over at Palermo. I'm not particularly au fait with the squad, except for this prick. He started a revolt against me in FM23. Fairly professional, my arse. Anyway, the point is that I want to get an understanding of my players' qualities in a way that can help me identify how we might want to set up. I prefer to think of players in terms of functions rather than roles. Do they aid progression? Do they create? Do they provide a goal-scoring threat? And so on. So that's what I want to do. I want to analyze a player's attributes so I can understand how they can best contribute. I started by taking a look at key and preferred attributes, specifically looking for differences between types of roles. Are the differences between a wingback and inverted wingback similar to the differences between a winger and inside winger? Are the differences between a deep line playmaker and a box-to-box midfielder similar to the differences between a deep line forward and a channel forward? The short answer is yes. I've broadly categorized in-possession functions as stretching, players who are best at providing width, linking, players who like to get on the ball, and dynamic, players who make runs. These are the attributes that those types of roles prioritize over their counterparts. So a striker with better composure and first touch than, say, anticipation and off the ball will be more suited to a linking role. There will be nuance within that. A player's strength or balance, for example, will indicate whether they're better as a deep line forward or false nine, but their broad function within the tactic remains the same. That's what I'm looking to identify. Out of possession, I've split into engaged. These are your active roles such as stoppers and pressers, and disengaged, your holders and screeners, and tracking and outlet as per the game's terms. I now have a list of attributes I want to focus in on, so let's make a custom squad view. I'll start with the mental attributes view as the base. Right-clicking on the headers brings up a menu where I can insert, replace or remove columns. Let's start by getting rid of those columns we don't need. I don't need the picked column, I don't need player status, I don't need determination or flair or leadership. I like to keep the attributes in the order they appear on a player's profile, technical, mental, then physical, in alphabetical order. So I want to add the technical attributes in this view to the left of the mental attributes. I need crossing, dribbling, finishing, first touch, marking, passing, and tackling. I want physical attributes to the right of the mental attributes, and here I just need acceleration, pace, and stamina. I will now adjust the widths of the columns so we can get everything on screen at once. What I'm looking to do is make each column as narrow as possible without squashing the information. If I make it too narrow, the boxes start to condense, which I want to avoid, so I bring it down to the minimum width before that starts happening. Eventually we end up with something a little like this. You will notice that the view name has changed to copy of mental up top. We can change this by renaming current view. Let's go for something uninspired like function attributes, and this will now appear as an option in the custom view section of the view menu. We're almost good to go. As FM26 doesn't have an export function, we're going to be using a third-party tool, and we want to make it as easy as possible for that tool to read the information. Let's head on over to the preferences menu, where the first thing we'll do is increase the text size. I've found large to be sufficient. Then we're going to pop on over to detailed and then audio and visual. In the custom skin color section, select custom to enable the edit colors menu. I'm now going to set every attribute color to white. We can revert back to our preferred scheme after we're done, but for now we need to make everything as easy to read as possible. We also have too many players to fit on one screen. I'm going to move players out on loan down to the under 20s, as they're not currently at the club, and I'm going to filter out goalkeepers because they're not really addressed by what we're currently doing. Now I just need to take a screenshot, and the Windows clipping tool is more than sufficient here. I'm going to select rectangle and just click and drag over the information I need. I do not need the player's picture, I do not need the column headings. This creates a lovely little screenshot, which on my PC goes to the Pictures Screenshots folder. Next, I'm going to head to onlineocr.net. This is my preferred picture-to-text converter. It's worked consistently for me, but there are plenty of free OCR tools out there. Find the one that works best for you. You can upload directly here without an account. Just select your file, choose Excel as your output format, then click Convert. There is a little waiting and processing time, but nothing major. Once done, download, then open in the spreadsheet software of your choice. For me, that's Google Sheets. Now you'll notice it's not perfect. We do need to clean it up a little. In this instance, there's some weird merged columns, but we can delete them without too much fuss. Some of the names are a little funky too, especially those with diacritics. You can edit these as you go, but in the case of something like this, it doesn't really make much difference. I'm going to take this information and copy it into a new spreadsheet. You'll see I've added the headings already. Now, as a general rule of thumb, I like to keep the raw data separate from the analysis, so let's create a second tab for that purpose. Before we continue, disclaimer time. I am not an expert in spreadsheets. I will take you through the approach I know and use, but if you're looking to refine your understanding of spreadsheets, then find an expert. I've linked a few in the description below to get you started. Right, back to it. Here I want a list of players, and then scores for each function I've identified, so those will be the headings. For the player list, we'll use an array. That's some curly brackets pointed at the list of players in the raw data. This way, whenever we add or remove raw data, this will update dynamically. To calculate the scores, I'm just going to take an average of the attributes we identified. So for a stretching player, that's crossing, dribbling, work rate, pace, and stamina. I also want it to only calculate if there's a player in that row, so we'll add that to the formula. If that cell is blank, do nothing, else do the formula. The player will always be in that column, so I use a $sign to fix that in place. Now I can drag this formula all the way down to the bottom, and it will only calculate for the rows we need. Then it's just a case of repeating that process for each of the functions. I'll pop a key up on the screen for reference. Now aesthetics are subjective, so tidy it up in a way that suits your preferences. I find that color coding helps section off information. So I have in-possession functions in blue, and then the out-of-possession functions are purple and pink, with them being separated by the types of functions performed by defenders and defensive midfielders, and the functions performed by more attacking positions. Angled text for the column headings is something I'm quite fond of, as it allows the columns to be narrower without truncating the text. I also prefer consistency between numbers, so I've set the formatting to 1 decimal place, and I've added some conditional formatting to quickly identify the highest score in each area. First up, the higher the number, the better the player is, theoretically. So I can already see from an in-possession standpoint that players like Pojampalo, Brunori, Vasic, Gayassi, Palumbo and Orgello, bastard, are our best players, and I can see how they can contribute. Gayassi and Orgello as the width providers, Palumbo and Vasic to help link play, Brunori and Pojampalo to do the running. Maybe not. After all, this is a scale. A player might be best suited to a function, but that doesn't mean that's the only thing they can do. Take Pojampalo for example. Whilst he's clearly dynamic, the difference between that and his linking ability is relatively small, just 0.4. For all our other strikers, the difference between the two functions is much starker. This suggests they are only really able to contribute in one way. Pojampalo, therefore, might be more suitable in a neutral role like centre forward, or as a linking player to complement those around him. This is perhaps clearer to see with out-of-possession functions. Someone like Mathiabani is clearly our best centre-back, and very capable in both functions, so would suit being a regular centre-back. If Patrick Peder plays, however, he is probably only suitable in a stopper role. So putting this all together, my tactical plan would probably end up being something a little like this, and it follows what was said earlier. Gayassi and Orgello provide the width, Palumbo, Vlasic and Pojampalo are my linking players, Brunori and Ranocchia add dynamism. I like to keep things quite vanilla defensively, but as Vlasic and Pojampalo are significantly more effective as outlets than trackers, then I'd ask Brunori to come back and help. So that was the basic analysis. We identified a need, created a view, exported the information, built a tool, analysed the output, then applied it practically in game. Now on to the advanced stuff. Once again, we need to start with our purpose. Let's carry on along the same lines, identifying the functions a player performs. I'm going to use the USL Dunkirk save for my most recent series. At the risk of labouring the point, as exporting isn't easy, I don't want to waste my time on things already available in the game. Let's take shot quantity and quality as an example. Whilst it might not be explicit, I can kind of work out what is good. There are more players below the line than above it, whilst the distribution is a bit more even left to right, with it perhaps being just a little below. So someone like Tom Riddle here is probably a good indicator of the average. That's 1.07 shots per 90 and an average chance quality of 0.14 xg. What I can't infer, however, is does Aaron Chan take a lot of shots because he gets a lot of service or because he's a greedy bastard? So I want that context. I want to know how involved a player is in the game. I want to know what they do with the ball. I want to know how they contribute defensively, and I want to compare across the league. First thing to note, I am focusing on raw numbers here instead of per 90 metrics. One observation I've made so far is that the OCR tool does not cope with decimal points well, so I want to avoid this where possible. It is also why I don't include leagues or clubs as a column if I can avoid it, because the logos yield some weird ass results. I use best position as it allows us to narrow down a player to just one position. Minutes will allow us to filter out those under a certain threshold and to calculate per 90 metrics ourselves. Passes attempted, crosses attempted and shots tells us what a player did with the ball. Passes completed, progressive passes, key passes and crosses completed allow us to break it down further. Tackles attempted, blocks, clearances and interceptions gives us insight into their defensive contributions. Tackles are a funky stat. A tackle is when a player dispossesses the opposition. A successful tackle is when the team regains possession after. As a result, successful tackles aren't a measure of a player's individual ability, but whether the team had players nearby to pick up the loose ball. I also haven't included headers, as there's no way to distinguish between attacking and defensive headers. I'm going to sort by minutes, then once again take a screenshot, this time full screen. I'm then going to scroll through every team in the league, screenshotting each one. For the next step, I use a tool called Figma. This is almost certainly not the optimal approach, but I'm familiar with it and it does what I need it to do. It's free for personal use, but as long as you follow the same principles, you can use whatever works best for yourself. The key thing here is to ensure that everything is arranged as uniformly as possible. In Figma, I create a frame and then position the screenshot precisely so I only have the data that is required. That does mean cutting off a couple of rows at the bottom, but they will almost certainly contain players who played too few minutes anyway. Once that's done, I now have a template. I create a copy for every team in the league. I then cut the screenshot for the next team, shift and click on the image, and then Ctrl, Shift and R to replace it. That means every single screenshot is in exactly the right place, down to the pixel. Except Dunkirk. The tactic buttons on your own squad means the alignment is slightly different, so that just requires a little adjusting. Once all teams are done, I line everything up. I do this in 2 batches, so for a league with 18 teams, that's 2 sets of 9. Ctrl and G groups the images together. I rename it and then export as a PNG. Now back on over to your preferred OCR tool. Upload your file, select Excel, click Convert, and voila. If you need to delete weird merged columns, do so, and then copy it into a brand new spreadsheet. We're going to do that twice, once for each batch. Again, I've added the headers already to the destination. You'll notice that I've pasted from column C this time. Columns A and B I've kept blank for the purpose of including league and club. First port of call, I'm going to add a filter. I'm going to search for players below 900 minutes, the equivalent of 10 full games, and I'm going to delete them. No point in wasting time on them with any of the additional stuff we're going to do. I will also look to filter through the position column for gobbledygook. Spacing can be missed before brackets, and sometimes the letters will be wrong, so it's just a case of validating against the game if there's any confusion. I'm also getting rid of goalkeepers. I'm not looking at goalkeeper specific metrics at the moment. Then I'll turn the filter off. I've just focused on League with this dataset, so I'll add that into the league column. If I was doing multiple leagues, I'd do this as I go for each league. Now for clubs, I set up the images in alphabetical order, and because the players are sorted by minutes, I can quickly look to see where one club ends and the next begins, so whilst it's manual, it doesn't take particularly long. Finally, I'll check back against the game for players out on loan so I can delete those rows. Our raw data is now set. We're now going to analyse this in multiple ways, starting by converting to per 90. This helps standardise performance. This is pretty simple. I've used an array, similar to before, for the first 5 columns. If we take the corresponding metric and divide it by the number of minutes played, we'll get a per minute metric. Multiply by 90 to get a per 90 minutes metric. Minutes will always be in the same column, so out comes the $sign again. We'll set the formatting to 2 decimal places, and voila, you now have all those metrics as per 90. From here, I want to understand how involved a player is and what they do with the ball. So let's work out combined attacking actions. That will be a sum of passes attempted, crosses attempted, and shot. Let's now calculate how regularly a player makes a progressive pass. I'll take the respective progressive pass number and divide by the number of combined attacking actions. We can extend this for key passes, crosses completed, and shots. Now I choose crosses completed instead of crosses attempted here for consistency. A progressive pass is a completed pass. A key pass is a completed pass. It follows suit that I want to know crosses completed here too. There are 2 more bits of data to infer. Firstly, what I call boring passes. These are completed passes that are neither progressive nor key, divided once more by combined attacking actions. And also bad passes. This is incomplete passes and incomplete crosses. I will then do the same for combined defensive actions, add together each metric, and then work each one out as a proportion of combined defensive actions. So now I have an idea of the profile of a player. Someone like Aaron Chan as our striker has only 22.14 involvement. That's less than half of the amount the attacking midfielders behind him have, and 16.5% of his touches are shots. That shows me he's a last shoulder kind of striker, looking to get into shooting positions rather than dropping deep and involved in build-up. Understanding a player's level of involvement is key, so let's look at that a little bit more. I'm going to break down performances by team, so let's create a new tab, and I'll start with a simple unique formula to grab all the unique entries from the team column in the raw data. By adding a sort formula, this will always be in alphabetical order. Then it's just a case of adding together all the actions, a lovely little sum-if formula. So if the data in the team column equals the team on the left here, add together all the minutes. The team names are always going to be in the same position, so let's add that $sign. I can now extend this out to every metric. And we can then make this a per game metric. So we take the newly calculated sum, divide by minutes, add a $sign in again, and then multiply by 900. Not 90 minutes this time. That's for individual players. We've removed goalkeepers, so there's 10 outfield players on the pitch at a time. 90 times 10 is 900 minutes. Again, let's extend this formula across all those metrics. And now we have a per game metric for each team. I now want combined attacking actions and defensive actions, so just like before, I add up the specific per game metrics we've just calculated. I can now use this to calculate relative player involvement. Back to the Players tab, and we'll add a couple more columns. For attacking actions share, I want to take the number of combined attacking actions the player performed, and then divide it by that team's average. For this, an X lookup. We want to check the team name against the team column in the team tab, and return the value from the combined attacking actions column in the team tab. A blank field for if the value is missing, and 0 means the search looks for an exact match. And we'll do the same for defensive action share, ensuring that column changes to the combined defensive actions column in the team tab. So at a quick glance, I can see that a lot of our in-possession activity goes through our central defenders and defensive midfielders. A lot of our out-of-possession activity is through our wing-backs. But how does any of this help? Let's look at our left wing-back situation. Kylian Kaboué and Ryan Hashim, both in their 30s, both entering the final season of their contracts. They've been great, so I'd be looking for a like-for-like replacement. So let's filter down by players who are left-backs or left wing-backs. I can immediately see that no one comes close in terms of successful cross rate, but not every team has a striker as awesome as Aaron Chan to get on the end of those crosses. What I want to key in on is players who have a similar level of involvement when attacking, and who have a similar profile defensively, so particularly active in tackling and interceptions rather than blocks and clearances. The last criteria immediately identifies two players, Owen Beck and Frederick Bjerken. Both have very similar profiles to our incumbents, and I'd feel comfortable with them slotting in seamlessly at Dunkirk. Now Bjerken is 31, so that would rule him out, so Beck would be the option here. In a real scenario, I'd export multiple leagues, not just so I can find more players with a similar profile, but ones who would be cheaper. But this is just an example, something general that can be applied to any save as an introduction to using statistics. But the real beauty comes when you move away from that generalized approach. Build something bespoke to your specific save. Like with my USL Dunkirk series, where I focused on metrics measuring entertainment, refining season after season. There will be a new mini-series coming soon exploring an entirely different idea, so keep your eyes peeled. Maybe you want to create the most extreme heavy metal gegenpress, focusing on pressures and sprints and distance covered. Or perhaps you really want to engage in the dark art, looking at fouls and set piece chances. Whatever it may be, look at the stats available in-game, find ones that match your style, and build something for you. See you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like, or hey, maybe even subscribing. If you want to support the channel further, you can join these wonderful folk currently adorning your screen as a YouTube member or Patreon. Details in the description below.